Right. So, good evening, guys. I'm just sharing my screen, so this should all pop up in just a second. This week we're talking about sleep. I feel like it's something that gets missed out of conversations very often when it not only comes to fat loss, but also just general health. It really is the foundation of everything, and you will learn that from this call today. But what I want to do is really dive into sleep and help you guys to understand why it is so major, not only for fat loss, but just if you're someone that wants to lead a healthier life and how it's the foundation for everything. But the last thing I want to do is overwhelm you guys, particularly if you're somebody that is struggling with sleep at the moment. I feel like we often go through ebbs and flows, but you might be someone that naturally just has struggled with sleep for a long time. I don't need to come away from this call feeling overwhelmed and like you have to overhaul your entire routine. This is just lots of tips and advice that you can start to implement, but always take it one thing at a time. So we're diving into this today. So sleep is one of the most underrated but important tools for fat loss and for our health. I think it was Matt Fraser. Matt Fraser is one of the most successful CrossFit Games athletes of all time, like an elite level CrossFitter. And he said that if sleep was a performance enhancing drug, it would be banned because it is so crucial, not only for wanting to lose weight, but for your performance in the gym and also just your day-to-day life as well. We all know, right, that when we have a really great night's sleep, things feel much easier, and vice versa. When we have a terrible night's sleep, things feel really awful and 10 times more difficult than they should. And that's why. So, I want to specifically talk about why sleep impacts your fat loss progress, particularly, and why it does impact things so much. So, first things first, your hunger hormones become out of sync. So, I forget which way round they are because I'm not a doctor. We have two main hormones, ghrelin and leptin. One of these hormones makes you feel hungry and the other makes you feel full, basically. So when you're not sleeping well and when you're not getting enough sleep or your sleep is really poor quality, these hormones basically go totally out of sync from each other. That is why when you've had a crap night's sleep, you have 10 times more cravings and you feel much hungrier than normal. That's because these two hormones aren't functioning at their normal levels because you haven't had good sleep. On top of that, cortisol, your stress hormone, and your melatonin levels are also impacted. So cortisol is our stress hormone. It gets a bad rep. It's not inherently a bad hormone, but cortisol is our stress hormone, and it's the thing that makes us feel awake in the morning and gets us out of bed. Melatonin is the opposite. You guys will know you can get melatonin tablets and melatonin supplements, but melatonin is what makes you feel sleepy at night. Also, when your sleep is impacted, these hormones go out of sync. So, you're feeling cortisol when you're supposed to be feeling sleepy. You feel melatonin when you're supposed to be feeling awake. So that's why it has such a big impact kind of biologically. So this happens, you have bad sleep. These hormones basically start functioning at different levels and at different times to when they should be. Tiredness just equals poor adherence. That's why when you're tired, your willpower drops, your cravings go through the roof. Cooking healthy meals feels incredibly unappealing, and suddenly getting a takeaway or going to McDonald's or having something quick and easy and calorie dense feels really tempting. Workouts feel much harder, and the likelihood to stressy or binge eat increases massively. That's why it's not just a you thing, and it's not that like you suddenly have no willpower. It is because like hormonally and biologically, your hormones have been massively impacted, and that's why it's so important for fat loss. The research on sleep and fat loss as well. So there's been a lot of studies to suggest that when people sleep for 5 hours a night instead of 8 hours, the hunger hormones increase, cravings for high calorie food increases, fat loss can decrease by up to 55% as well, and the potential to lose muscle mass increases. Obviously, when you guys are losing weight, you want to make sure that you're losing as much fat as possible and shedding as little muscle tissue as possible. That's why with us, you guys are prioritizing weightlifting, eating lots of protein, and losing fat in a way that is gradual and sustainable. Because if we do it too fast, we shed muscle and we don't shed fat, and that's why. But all of this gets massively impacted. So your sleep needs to be optimal, and your sleep isn't optional if fat loss and getting healthier is your goal. So, how much sleep do you actually need? As a general rule of thumb, obviously, this is talking about the majority of people and kind of like the general population. This obviously isn't talking about specialists and things like that. Most adults need 7 to 9 hours a night. Studies have shown that us women might need closer to that 9 hour sleep target compared to men. Studies, there are some studies suggest that men might function fine on kind of like 7 to 8, whereas it's suggested that women might need just slightly more. I'm not 100% sure why that is. I think potentially due to the fact that obviously we just have different hormonal balances. It might be something to do with the fact that we bear children. I don't know, but that's what I would logically think. But the signs that you are undersleeping and that you're not getting enough are these are kind of the big ones. So you rely very heavily on caffeine to get you through the day. You feel absolutely exhausted by mid-afternoon, kind of no matter what you do. You struggle with cravings at night. That's not exclusively just because you're not getting enough sleep. That could also be just underfueling during the day, but you could be for that reason. You hit your snooze alarm multiple times. I'm not just saying you hit it once or twice, you hit it multiple times. It's hard to get out of bed, or you feel constantly stressed or overwhelmed. And that is a feeling that you always have. These are signs that your sleep and getting better sleep might be something that you need to focus on. So, how do we actually try to improve our sleep without the need for hopefully medication or reliance on tablets? Of course, there is the potential to go down the route of going to your GP and getting sleep supplements, sleeping pills. But it would be really great in an ideal world if we could fix this a little bit more naturally without having to do lots of trips down to the doctor and without having to be reliant on any medication. That would be really great. So, this is what we're going to talk about natural, more natural sort of remedies. So, the first thing and the biggest thing, by the way, I think somebody might not be on mute. If you guys just want to double check that your audio is muted, I think I can hear something in the background just to let you know. It's all good. First things first, reset your circadian rhythm. So, your circadian rhythm is a very fancy way of just saying your body clock. Your circadian rhythm is when you naturally wake up and naturally go to sleep at night. So, those hormones I was talking about, your cortisol and your melatonin, when you're not sleeping well, these hormones go out of sync, and that is why it suddenly becomes very difficult to wake up and go to sleep at regular times. That is because those two hormones are operating at different times when they should be. So there's a really easy way to fix this, and that works really well. I've tried it with loads of you guys and also tons of people that have come into the program before you, and it works really well. It's basically just about resetting your body clock. The way to do that, first things first, is you need to commit, if you're struggling with sleep, 100% to going to bed and waking up at the same time, no matter what. Guys, somebody's audio is just on, so if you could just mute yourself, that'd be great. Thank you. So you need to wake up and go to sleep at the same time as much as possible, and you need to be so strict on that and so committed to doing that. This is going to really help naturally for you to reset your body clock and hopefully make sure that your cortisol is higher in the mornings and your melatonin is higher in the evening. So that cortisol wakes you up and the melatonin sends you off to bed. That's the first thing. And that has to be an absolute non-negotiable. Even if, if you're feeling reluctant to do that, but you're struggling with sleep, the honest truth of it is that that's got to be prioritized. The next thing following on from that, so as well as setting those regular sleep and wake up times, you need to start doing early sunlight exposure. That means first thing in your day, or even late in the morning or early in the afternoon, you need to get outside and you need to get sunlight in your eyes for 10 minutes. No sunglasses, ideally not through a window as well, like ideally actually outside. I think it still does work when it's sent through a window, but it works better if you're outside. Get out in your day and get 10 minutes of sunlight in your eyes. You can do this when you're on a morning walk. It's good now that we're heading into spring in the UK because we actually have light mornings now. So this is going to become much easier. Good news. Or if you're not doing your morning walk, you can make your morning coffee or your morning tea or your morning breakfast and you can sit outside in the garden and then you can have it. That 10 minutes of sunlight really helps to reset those hormones as well. Again, it really helps to reset your cortisol and your melatonin. Combined with that and trying to wake up and go to sleep at exactly the same time, this will do so much to help you to fall asleep and wake up at the same time each day and not struggle so much with getting to sleep. What you can do in the winter as well is invest in a SAD clock, so seasonal affective disorder. I'm sure a lot of us struggle with this more than we realize. It's to get some early sunlight in the dark winter months. So, when we wake up at 6 or 7 in the morning and it is still absolutely pitch black outside, you can invest in a SAD clock. And that's still a really good way for you to get some light in your eyes in those tough winter months. If you're someone that lives overseas and you don't have this problem, you're really lucky. But for those of us sort of, UK, Europe, we need to kind of think about that. But this is the first thing. And if you're someone right now that's really struggling with sleep, this is the absolute foundation and fundamental that I would recommend you fix before you do anything else in this call. Before jumping to like little bitty techniques, before jumping into supplements or medication or anything like that, you need to fix this first. And it's absolutely imperative. It'll make you feel so much better. Following on from that, the next big thing, and some of you might not like to hear this, but you do have to reduce your caffeine window. Caffeine has a half-life. So that means that when you drink it in the afternoon, it's not just you're going to get a couple of hours of buzz and it's going to fade off. It stays in your system for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. So even if you don't necessarily feel like you're having a caffeine buzz in the late afternoon or the evening, if you are having caffeine at 4 p.m. and you're massive struggling with sleep, the caffeine is very much still going to be in your system. And that's caffeine from coffee. That is also caffeine coming from like fizzy drinks and all that sort of stuff as well. It's something you need to be aware of. And tea as well, obviously. So if you struggle with sleep at the moment, if you've tried step number one and things still aren't shifting, but you are having coffee quite late into the day, your cutoff time needs to be 12 or 1 p.m. I'm someone that has definitely phases where I struggle with sleep. I'll have phases where I sleep really well, I'll have other phases where I don't. And for that reason, I love coffee. Coffee is my favorite thing. Adam is the same. We love going out for coffee on the weekend is our favorite thing. My caffeine cutoff time is about 1 p.m. I will have one or two a day and then I will cut it off, even though I love it. That's because I know that if I have it, I'm just going to be feeling really awake in the evening. And after a big day of work, lots of decisions made, sometimes you get to the end of a working day and your brain feels a little bit fried. Then having caffeine in your system and trying to sleep is very difficult. So this is the next thing that you need to do. And again, you might not like hearing this, but the good news is that if you're a coffee drinker, decaf coffee is really good. There is still a very small amount of caffeine in decaf drinks, but very minimal compared to a fully caffeinated one. So that's also a thing that you can do, and that's not too much of a sacrifice for good sleep, right? That's the second thing that you need to think of. Third thing is sleep hygiene. What I mean by sleep hygiene is not how clean your sheets are, which I think some people might think it is, but it's actually just like how you're falling asleep, what your bedtime routine is like, what your room is like when you're going to sleep. So, first things first, try to have a bit of a colder room. If your room is colder, you're actually more likely to fall asleep. And that's because when we're drifting off to sleep, our body temperature, our internal body temperature cools down. So if the room is really hot, it's harder for our core temperature to cool down, can take us longer to drift to sleep. So first of all, try to have a colder room. Second thing is if you're struggling with sleep, get blackout curtains, get blinds, or get an eye mask because that will really help you to stay asleep for longer. Start falling asleep to something like a really boring book or a podcast. This really helps. I love having a listen to a podcast before I go to sleep. It's really good to do. And it's something that isn't screen related. It's not scrolling on your phone or watching TV, but it is doing something that's going to hopefully calm your mind down, distract your mind from the day, focus on something else, do a bit of escapism, and fall asleep. The next thing that you can do is also having a shower before bed. If you have a hot shower, that actually lowers your core body temperature rather than heats it up. It's because you step out of the shower and suddenly your temperature drops. You know, when you get out of a shower, and especially in the winter, like you get out and you feel cold, that's because your body temperature has lowered down. So a hot shower or a hot bath before bed can also make you more likely to fall asleep. That's also something you can try. This is a big one. You need to start putting your phone on Do Not Disturb, moving it away from your bed, or putting it in a different room. I am not ashamed to admit that I am definitely, I would say, addicted to my phone. My whole job, obviously, working with you guys, everything that I do, posting on social media, everything that I do for that, my whole life is basically working on my phone. So I noticed that I was slipping into using my phone very late. It was very hard for me to put my phone down, and I realized that I really need to make a change and set some boundaries. So what I now do is I will leave my phone down in our office, our home office. Adam and I do exactly the same thing. Phone goes on charge at like 8 p.m. It goes on Do Not Disturb, and then I do not look at my phone until the morning. Sometimes I slip up, sometimes I fall back into old habits. I'm only human. But that's the rule, and that's the rule that I've set myself. Less stress and less doom scrolling and less bright light in your eyes, which is designed to keep you awake, that blue light. So if you're someone that struggles with sleep and you're the same, you can very much default be scrolling on your phone, watching Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts, whatever it might be, or TikTok at 10 p.m. That needs to change, and that needs to be a habit that you break. Any habit that you break, it's going to feel uncomfortable for a while. It's going to feel annoying, but the time that you're spending scrolling on your phone at night, even though in the moment you feel like, oh, it's me time and I'm doing something for me, that is taking away time and taking away energy from future you the next day. So that definitely is something that needs to be addressed. A little thing here as well, if you guys are people that work from home, such as me and Adam, if you work in your room from home at the moment, a good idea is, if you can, obviously, it depends on what your living situation is. If you can, try to take your work out of your bedroom and only associate your room with sleep and calm. If we associate our room with work, and let's say we have a really busy day at work or a stressful day at work, that room is also associated with stress when your bedroom should just be associated with calm. So this really helps. And you should try, if you can, move your work to somewhere else, move it into the dining room, or if you have a home office at your house, like make sure it's always done in there, never done in your room, and keep that as a very calm peaceful space. The next thing is try to limit your stress before bed. We've talked about screen time, but you need to have a cut-off time from work as well. If you are someone that is working from home or self-employed, you don't go to work and you don't have a set 9 to 5, and there's the temptation to slip, you really owe it to yourself to have a really specific cut-off time from work and say, after 6 p.m., I am not going to work. And that's the boundary that I'm setting for myself. If you find it very easy to slip and to work late into the night, you need to set that boundary for yourself, because that is only bringing stress into your life. So that's the first thing. We've talked about devices having a cut-off time, or at least having a cut-off time from social media. This will do wonders for your sleep, but it will also do wonders for your mental health. It's very easy for us to forget that constant onslaught of information, that constant being accessible, being contactable on social media, people always knowing what we're doing and you always knowing what other people are doing, that's a relatively new concept for us. And that's not something that I think us humans are actually designed or should really be designed to do. It's very easy to forget that we're not meant to be that readily available or have access to that information all the time. So at least have a cut-off time from social media and don't go on it after a certain time. That's coming from someone that works in social media. It does do a lot of wonders for your mental health. Next thing that you can do is just make a list. If you've had a really stressful day at work, or if you just have a lot of stress and anxiety going on at the moment, making a list and dumping down all of your thoughts before bed can really help you to do a physical thing that empties your mind, and that is really good to do. Also, just read or relax and do something enjoyable before bed. I mentioned about reading a book or listening to a podcast. It's really good to have those things because they are a bit of escapism from a busy day. So if you're not doing that as well, come away from your phone for a bit and do something else that's enjoyable and that is soothing. One little caveat in here as well is, if you're struggling with sleep at the moment and you quite often do late evening workouts, if you can, it might be good to reassess the time that you're training. Obviously, exercise is great for you. It's got loads of health benefits, but exercising brings your energy up, and brings your cortisol levels up to an extent. Once you've got a good workout in, you get those endorphins, you feel really good, don't you? You feel awake, you feel fresh, you feel clear. If you're struggling with sleep and you're training late in the evening, that could be impacting your sleep as well, just because you're feeling really buzzed when you get home. So if you are struggling, you might need to just reassess your gym times and see if you can try and do it a bit earlier in the day to give you a better chance at drifting off to sleep. A couple more here. The next thing you need to do is just be aware of your alcohol consumption. So alcohol is not off limits. You guys know this, particularly for someone that loves to have a glass of wine on a weekend. That's your way of socializing and winding down. There is space for you to have alcohol. However, if you are someone that is struggling with sleep, alcohol is something that needs to be looked at and realistically needs to be looked at. Yes, of course, it's not off limits, but we know that at the end of the day, alcohol is full of toxins and isn't good for us. So we just need to be aware of how much we're having, particularly if you are struggling with sleep. So the reason why alcohol is a little bit damaging in some ways to health and also fat loss is because the first thing it does is it disrupts your REM sleep. That's your rapid eye movement sleep, and that's where a lot of your recovery is done. So if you are drinking a lot of alcohol quite regularly, even if it's just one or two a night every night, this is going to really disrupt your REM sleep and it's going to be difficult for you to recover. And you're just not going to have deep sleep either. It also takes away your deep sleep. So you're not going to recover very well from workouts. Your progress in the gym will slow down a bit. And also your deep sleep, your restorative sleep, there won't be a huge amount of that because of the alcohol. So that's why very often we feel crap the next day from alcohol. Let's say, when you have a hangover, You don't actually feel crap necessarily just because of the alcohol. It's actually because of the lack of sleep. That's often the thing that's kind of getting us. The other thing as well is that when there is alcohol in your system, because it is a toxin, your body the next day and your liver will prioritize trying to get rid of that alcohol. And obviously, if you're trying to lose weight and burn fat at the same time, your body's very smart and it will think the immediate thing that I need to get rid of at the moment is alcohol and it's not fat. That's why your fat loss progress does slow down if you're drinking a lot as well, because all that effort will go to removing the alcohol and there won't be so much emphasis on your body burning fat. So, again, it's not putting down drinking alcohol, it's not off limits, it's there for balance. It's just you guys need to be aware of how it does impact your progress if fat loss is the goal and if getting better sleep is the goal as well. So if you are struggling, you just need to make sure that you have really clear boundaries with it. With alcohol, if you're struggling with sleep, sorry, if you're struggling with sleep, you need to have clear boundaries with alcohol, particularly, during the working week. I would recommend limit your alcohol during the working week as much as possible, and then save a glass or two of your favorite drink, maybe for the weekends when you've got more time to relax and enjoy. Next thing, talking about kind of like supplements and magnesium. In terms of like, specific sleep supplements, there's loads of them out there. I don't know all the information about all of them, because I'm not a nutritionist, but there's a lot of things to suggest that magnesium can really support relaxation, so can support your sleep quality. Magnesium is kind of like a natural supplement. It's not something that has to be like prescribed by a doctor. You can just pick it up. The benefits of it is that magnesium has been shown to help calm your nervous system. It supports muscle relaxation and it also can really improve your sleep quality. The best types are magnesium glycinate or magnesium biglycinate. So if you struggle with sleeping, magnesium can be a thing that you consider. A typical dose is you kind of have like 200 to 400 milligrams of it, and you take it about 30 to 60 minutes before bed. You can take them kind of in tablet form. You can get sachets. You can get like flavored sachets that you put into cold water or into a cup of tea or something like that. It's not a sleeping pill. It just supports better sleeping habits. So if you are really struggling with sleep, a lot of people I know have taken it and it has worked very well for them. So that's something you can consider. You can get a lot of them where they're not too expensive to buy as well. Just make sure that you go for either one of those two. You can get one, I think it's magnesium oxide. I think that's been shown to suggest that the absorption of that isn't so good. So it's better to go for the others. Also, randomly, natural things that you can try that have been strongly suggested to improve sleep. Kiwis, if you eat a kiwi, kiwis have got melatonin in them. And cherry juice is the same as well. Cherry juice has melatonin. So if you're taking that 30 to 60 minutes before bed, either eating a kiwi or drinking some cherry juice, that can also help you to feel more sleepy at night and drift off into better sleep. So that's just some food for thought as well. Now, I've said all of this and I've been like, yeah, this is how to get better sleep. This is how to do this, how to do that. I'm very aware that many of you in this program are parents with young children. So I know that some of you are probably going to listen to this talk and be like, yes, Zoe, that sounds great on paper. However, I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, or I have a 6-month-old and a 4-year-old, I'm very aware that when you have children that are young, that love you very dearly but disturb your sleep, a lot of this is kind of easy said than done, and I completely appreciate that. So the one thing that you need to realize if you are someone that has young children, perfect sleep probably isn't going to be realistic for you right now, but that's okay. You don't have to have perfect sleep to make progress. You don't have to have perfect. You just need to try and optimize the sleep that you can get as much as you can. And just because you're not having the best sleep ever, it doesn't mean that you're doomed and you're not going to make good progress. It's just a case of saying, okay, this is the reality of the situation. I have kids that wake me up and love waking me up at 5 a.m. and I don't get as much sleep as I'd want or as I need. There's still some things that we can do to make sure that we're trying to optimize the sleep that you do get as much as possible. So it's about focusing on controlling what you can. So nap if possible when your children are napping, if you've got really young, if you've got babies or toddlers. Try to prioritize an earlier bedtime for yourself if you can. Once the kids are off to bed, let's see if you can maybe get to bed a little bit earlier than normal. Reducing your caffeine dependency and your caffeine window. If you feel like you're a parent that is very much relying on caffeine to get you through the day, I very much empathize with that. But at the end of the day, caffeine dependency it's not something we really want to rely on. And that caffeine late in the day will only be harming you when you try to sleep late at night. So reducing your caffeine dependency is something to think about. Sharing night duties where possible. Obviously, again, I know this is easier said than done. Some of you guys are single parents. I know that, but this is just ideas for the general where possible. And still, even if you do have the worst night's sleep, and this applies to people that work night shifts as well, um, try to focus on consistent wake times at least as much as possible. Even though it's hard, even if you have an awful night's sleep and you only get a few hours, still try to wake up at the same time every day, because that will help you to ensure that hopefully you have a better night's sleep the next day. Whereas if we're sleeping and waking up at different times throughout the day, your body clock, your circadian rhythm is likely to get impacted and kind of go out the window. So this will really help with that. But like I said, you don't have to have perfect sleep to make progress. And sometimes I think if someone says to you, like, you need to get better sleep, if you're someone that struggles with sleep, then that adds pressure and that adds a little bit of stress at bedtime. It's like a catch-22. It's like you tell me I need better sleep. Now I'm stressed about not getting good sleep, and I'm kind of like in this cycle feeling more stressed when I'm trying to sleep. So you don't have to have perfect sleep to make progress. Absolutely not. These are just things that we can do to try and optimize it a little bit. And I'm not expecting you guys to change everything overnight at all. It's just about implementing one thing at a time. The three things that are biggest sleep killers, so you know: late caffeine, screens and social media before bed, and stress and overthinking. Those are the three things, and the three biggest things that kind of kill your sleep. This is an example of a night routine that you can use. Again, you know, this isn't going to apply to everyone, but it's an example of what you can use. So 9:30, phone goes on do not disturb and maybe goes in the other room. 9:40, you have a shower. 9:50, you take your magnesium supplement. 10 o'clock, you read, get into bed or listen to a podcast. And then 10:30, you try to do lights out and off to sleep. That's just an example of something that you can take that's really simple. So you haven't gone and suddenly done every technique that I've mentioned here under the sun. You've just taken a couple of them and implemented them into your routine to see if that works. So this is your sleep checklist. So first things first, no matter who you are, no matter what your goal is, and no matter where you're at in life, you deserve to have restful, good quality sleep as much as possible. Your checklist, and this is in kind of priority order. So first things first, you need to reset your circadian rhythm, and that's with the sleep schedule, early sunlight exposure, getting a sad lamp if it's cold and dark and miserable in the winter. Next thing is the caffeine window. Next thing is your sleep hygiene, trying to make your room as calm and as open and good for sleep as much as possible. Limiting your stress before bed as much as possible, you know, limiting your screen time, all that sort of stuff that we talked about there. Alcohol quantity, if you're someone that feels like maybe you don't drink a lot, but alcohol is there here and there frequently, and you struggle with sleep, something to think about. And then just possible supplementation. Not compulsory. You don't have to suddenly go and start taking magnesium or eating 10 kiwis or doing all this stuff. It's just ideas of things you can implement if you feel like you've tried a lot of this stuff. I want you guys to ask yourself this now on this call. What is one thing that you could improve this week that might help your sleep? One thing. The first thing that I would recommend is looking at your sleep schedule and your circadian rhythm. That's often the biggest piece of the puzzle that's missing and the thing that changes for people the most. So if you are not good at going to bed and waking up at the same time at the moment, that's the first thing to look at. But regardless, what is one thing that you can improve this week that might help your sleep? And just keep it really simple. I hope that was helpful, guys. If you have any questions, drop me a message. Drop me a message after this call, whether you're watching live or watching back on YouTube. There are lots of things that you can do to help yourself to get better sleep. And if you are someone that's struggling with sleep at the moment, I know how challenging it can be. Like I said, I've had phases where I've not slept well. It can be really difficult. And it can be very stressful as well. So it will get better. I can promise you guys that. These are the things that you need to implement before you start considering maybe going to see your GP to get medication or anything like that. But I hope this helps, guys. Just a final reminder that Adam and I will be kind of out of office between tomorrow and Friday. Still get your check-in done this Friday, but I will be back as normal, fully in with you guys, normal hours from Monday coming. Have a lovely evening, everyone. It's really good to have so many of you live, and I will catch up with you all very soon.